in the door. My favorite thing about that is when you like start the session, got one extra word that trickles through. So when this recording goes live, people will be like, "What was that guy talking about?" Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's workshop on resumes for positions in the like state and local government, the non-U.S. federal public sector, if you will. I imagine that more than a few of you who are attending today are familiar with the format here and some of the previous events that we've done. Perhaps you're on last week's. I'm doing the thing right now where I fill a little bit of time when people are trickling into the room, just to make sure we're starting with the meat when people are actually present, but I can get some of the particulars done. I'm Joe Miller. I am ESA's Director of Membership. Our professional services, our career services really fit within the membership portfolio as far as we're concerned at ESA. So I'm often not the person on point. You may have encountered my colleague Sandra Dario. She's normally the person who's taking care of these, but I'm filling in because Sandra is off today. I'm very pleased to be joined today by three colleagues who are just being ever so generous with their time and doing excellent commitment to other members within ESA and providing some of their advice to you and your opportunity to develop good applications for jobs within this sector. First person you're going to hear from is Lis Nelis. Lis is with Ramboll, actually is an ecological consultant herself, but is going to be covering the differences between like a CV, which you may be familiar with, and a resume, particular to the space. And then we're going to turn things over to our two panelists, each of whom respectively works within that sector, to hear their perspectives on what makes like a good application for like a public sector resume. Really quickly, I'm going to ask you both to just introduce yourselves in about 30 seconds. Rese Cloyd.
Hi, I'm Rese Cloyd. I'm the Associate Director for Fisheries and Wildlife at the District of Columbia Department of Energy and Environment. So that's essentially, I'm the State Fish and Wildlife Director.
Well, thank you, Rese. Rese is also our incoming president-elect for ESA, very modest, not to say so. And then Nicole Ward.
Hi, I'm Nicole Ward. I work for the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. I am a field station supervisor for the Upper Mississippi River Restoration Program. So it's a 5-state partnership. We work really closely across the 5 Upper Mississippi River states and federal and nonprofit organizations. Yeah, but I'm part of Minnesota DNR.
Thank you both so very much. And can everybody see my slides right now? Okay, fantastic. All right. So, folks, just to give you a really quick run of events, I'm going to kick things over to Lis here in about 30. What we're going to do is just get into the guts of like what it is, what is a resume, how to make it work for these kinds of job applications. Then we're going to pause for a second before we go to the panelists. I'm going to run through a few quick announcements. Then we're going to go into Q&A. And if you have Q&A like that's specific to either presenter, you can enter it into that Q&A tool at any time, and I will do my best to bring it up within context. I'll be sort of the facilitator for that. Otherwise, you can wait till we get toward the end, and then we'll have the big general Q&A. This stuff I'll be moderating the Q&A, and I'll be doing my best to keep everything moving. My other panelists are welcome to jump in and answer questions live within the Q&A tool itself. But if we don't get to your questions, do not take it personally. We're actually collecting all of these, and we're going to be building out a blog series to help just have a bunch of general career advice available. Okay. So, without any further ado, Lis Nelis, turning it over to you.
Hi. So I'm going to be speaking today about CVs versus resumes. The reason that they asked me to present this is because I had been mentioning that I had done a job search recently and for my consulting company, and we had asked for resumes, and I was sent several different academic CVs from different individuals, and these were not appropriate for the job search, and in fact I couldn't get the information that I wanted to out of them to know whether these candidates were good or would be helpful in our job or not. So we're talking about this today. Curriculum vitae, or CV, is much longer than a resume. That's the first difference. It's an itemized list of person's entire education. You can see the quote there. It can have infinite pages depending on your experience level. So I've seen 2 pages to 30 pages, and that's just very difficult to get through. It is typically accepted by academics. This is the format that you would have to submit for academic publications because they want to see every single award, honor, achievement, professional experience you've had. A resume is much shorter. It's typically a quick summary of a person's education and experiences. And the key word in that quote is relevant. It's typically 1 to 2 pages, and it's accepted by most industries. Occasionally, I've seen a 3-page one, but people often stop reading at 2 pages. So that's why we typically say 1 to 2 pages. All right, next slide, please. So this is an example that we're looking at here of an academic CV. I took a CV that somebody sent me and I edited it. So it is, well, I changed it up so it's based on a real CV. This is an academic CV. This one had the list of sections that you can see on the left here. Went through education, scholarly interests, academic appointments, awards and honors, funding, publications, presentations, and it was very long. This CV actually had scholarly interest, which most that I see don't usually even have. It just jumps right into academic appointments, and the academic appointments are shown as they are here. So it's just the name of the position and where it was. There's no other information about what they did there. So can you jump onto the CV or the resume slide, please? So this is a picture of one of my resumes that I submitted. This is a list of the sections that I had in my resume and that I've seen in other resumes as well. So if you notice, one big difference is I don't have my academic education up here. First thing that people are usually looking at is professional experience. So they want to know what other jobs you have. Another thing to note here is in my professional experience, unlike in the academic experience one, I don't just list the job title, I list some of the things that I did for each of these jobs. You also notice at the beginning, there's a short paragraph that I called skills. You don't have to call it skills. It should be a summary. So this one should be specific to whichever job you're applying for. So this is the part of your resume that you would edit for every single job that you're applying for. And the way that you do that is look in the job ad, find keywords, and make sure that those keywords are included in at least the skill, whatever summary section at the top here. Because the steps for reviewing a resume, often in private sector companies anyway, is an administrative assistant reads this first. If it doesn't have the keywords that is given to them, they will throw it out. So you want to have those keywords in there. The professional experience needs to explain what you actually did, because what you're trying to show is your skills. You can also have a section in there called technology or languages or skills, whatever would be appropriate for this job. So for a consulting type job where they're asking for specific software knowledge, you would want to put in technology and talk about what you program in, or what Microsoft Word, things that you can use like that. This could also be languages or skills. When I applied with a resume for some other positions, I also put on that I know how to drive a forklift, because for those positions, it would have been helpful. Education, college and above, you should put in everything for your education, publications and certifications. And if you see, I'm sorry, part of the slide got cut off, but all those that have red stars there should be relevant to this job. So if there's a lot of jobs that I've done that I left off of here. No one needs to know that I worked at Victoria's Secrets, for example. That professional experience comes right off of my resume. The publications and certifications, often you write selected publications, selected certifications if it's a long list, and you only put in the ones that are most recent or most relevant. So you can go on to the next slide, Jen. So this is looking at them side by side to give you a comparison. If you note, the biggest difference here that I see when I'm reviewing these for job applications is that I need to know upfront, what are your skills? How are you going to fit into my job? So you can see the resume that is still on the left here has a lot more information about what was done in each of these positions as opposed to the one on the right. So that's really important. If you go on to the next slide, I've got some other points here. So when people are hiring, they're basically looking for 3 things. If you distill it down, can you do the job? Like, do you have the skills? Do you have demonstrated experience with these skills? Are you going to do the job well? Do you have enough experience to be able to do this and hit the ground running or learn very quickly? And do they want to work with you? And that is some personality, but also some of the experiences that may be shared, and that comes across usually in interviews as well. So when you're applying, think about the people that are reading your application. As I said before, this typically goes through an administrative assistant or HR person where they're going to go through all the CVs. If they don't have the keywords they're looking for, they're just going to throw them out. And they're not even going to get to the reviewers. The person that is reviewing your application is looking at a lot of applications. So you want to make the information really easy for them to find. You want to use the keywords that are going to jump out at them, and you want to make it formatted in a way that is easy for them to look for the things that they want. So, if they're really interested in having publications, that needs to be highlighted. They need to be able to jump to that section and see what you've published. When I had the last job that we posted, we got 115 applicants for it. The HR person threw out 40 of them before I even looked at them, but I read every single one of the rest of them. That was a lot to read. And the applications that were really long or that were presented in paragraph form where I couldn't get the information that I wanted out of them, the longer I was reading them, the shorter my patience was. And like towards the end, I was just trying to find reasons to throw people out. And that's disturbing to hear if you're the one applying, but that is the reality. So make yours really easy. And honestly, the format that I showed here does not matter as much as the clarity. And you can go online and you can Google resume for whatever type of job it is that you're interested in. You're going to find several different formats. Any format is really going to be fine as long as the information comes out clearly. So that's mine, and I can answer questions about that later if you'd like, but I think we're going back to Jonathan.
Come back to me, and I'm muted myself like a goon. Thanks, Lis. That was very good. I'll reiterate, because this was the point I made when we were talking about the resumes and the commercial sciences, is that it's what Lis was saying about the format matters less than the clarity. It's 100% true. Now, don't send like a free form bit of poetry for a job application, like with like Lisa's company or a government agency, perhaps. But if as long as like you're really covering the bases and you're just like laying it heavy on like all those keywords that Lis mentioned and tying like the document itself to the announcement, to the description that's listed online, that's you're going to start to see your resume, your application is getting some pickup, because people are actually going to notice that and to see that you're giving them the thing that they want, and that's like ultimately the most important thing. I've had the same struggle that she's had, and not too distant past. It was like, all these people might be really good for this job. I don't know. They're not telling me that they are. They're just giving me the general information, and that doesn't help me at all. So anyway, pausing really quickly, just like you may have told, I'm giving you all a chance to start answering some things into the Q&A if you have questions. But I'm also going to give you a chance here really quickly, because actually, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's not, because I see we're at 2:15 right now. I want to give Nicole and Rese a good chance to go. I'm looking at both of you. I know I sent it in an email, and here's the thing: I don't remember binary things very well. It's the yes, no, up, down, left, right. Never remember which one was which. Which of the two of you did I say was good to go first up?
I think me.
Okay, great. Then, Rese Cloyd, I'm very happy to turn this over to you to give your perspective on resumes and applications and everything.
Yeah. So the first thing that John had asked was that just kind of give a little background on the kinds of jobs that ecologists might get within my agency. So as I said, I'm with the District of Columbia Department of Energy and Environment. The District of Columbia is this kind of weird hybrid. We are a city. We're a city of about 750,000 people. But in many respects, we are treated like a state, although not all respects. And so I am essentially the state fish and wildlife director, but I am housed within a much larger agency that includes water quality, that includes utility assistance and affordability, sustainability, toxic substances, sort of runs a whole gamut of things that are related to energy and environment. And as a result, we have a lot of different places where ecologists might fit in. So within the Fisheries and Wildlife Division, we have subject matter experts in various taxa. We have folks who work on habitat restoration, both within my division and in our sister division, which is watershed protection. We have people who are working as inspectors to ensure that construction projects and other development in the city is abiding by the rules for clean water, for protection of wetlands, those sorts of things. We have folks who work as reviewers for permits. So these are all places where I have seen ecologists sort of fit in and find a position within the agency. Some of those jobs do require other certifications, but oftentimes we are looking for people who can be a little bit more of a generalist, which I think ecologists are perfect for that, because we really are thinking about the ecosystem and not only a single taxa. Also, when I'm hiring for a field biologist, I am also usually looking for someone who has expertise in different taxa, because my state mammologist is also my state herpetologist. My state entomologist is also my state botanist. Um, my, so I'm always looking for people who can demonstrate expertise in multiple taxa in multiple areas. And when I say expertise, I don't mean like you have to have gotten your degree in, you don't have to have a degree in mammal biology and a degree in uh, reptile biology or something, but you have to be conversant in those topics, and you have to be able to show in your resume that you have experience in those areas, and that you have the flexibility to help be a part of that biology team that can address multiple taxa. But even before you get to your resume, you have to make it through the screening questionnaire. So for all of our state jobs, there is a screening questionnaire. It's generally the subject matter is 5 or 6 questions where we ask you to tell us about your experience in important topics that are related to that job. So you have to answer that screening questionnaire honestly, but also in a way that gets you through that first screen. People do get kicked out because they don't have enough experience. And sometimes they get kicked out because they have too much experience. So if we're hiring for an entry-level biologist, we might kick out people who say they have 10 plus years of experience as a supervisor, because we want someone who has less experience, which is why I say, be honest in your answers, because sometimes there might be advice, always pick the highest score, but that may not actually get you through the screening process. The other thing that is a part of that screening questionnaire is often a short answer section where we might say, how much experience you have in habitat restoration? Please give some examples. I have gotten a number of people who have answered the same exact thing for all 6 screening questions, or who have written things that do not demonstrate their experience. So if they come to me with a high score because they picked all the right numbers, and I look at their short answer and it doesn't match, I put that to the side before I get to the resume. So first I see the questions, then I see the short answers, then I see the resume. And I'm looking to see, does that resume match what people answered in those short answer questions? But those short answer questions give you a chance to get into some of those details that maybe you didn't get into in that 2-page resume. So that's a place where you can shine a light on a project that you have done that because you've read the job ad, you know is important for that state or city. You can talk about your expertise in the flora and fauna of that area, even if maybe your degree is from a place in a different region of the country. You can make an argument that, hey, I'm applying for this job to be your state mammologist, but most of my work is in fisheries, but I had some experience as a field tech doing mammals that maybe doesn't quite show up on the resume, but you can give more background there. So use every opportunity available to you. Don't just think, well, my resume will speak for itself, or I've answered all the screening questions, and so I don't need to focus on my resume. You need to sit down and take time to do that application, to answer those questions, and to put thought into your answers. Also, write your own answers. I can tell when an answer has been written by AI or when someone has used AI to answer a question and I look at the resume and the AI put in all the right keywords in their short answers, but their resume does not support it. So just a caution. I saw that with my most recent job posting. A number of folks had used AI that, I looked at the answers and I was like, this is great. And then I looked at their resumes and there was nothing to back up their answers. So just a caution that it is a tool and it can help you be a better writer and it can help you address what you see in the job ads, but you need to fact check it if you're going to use that as a tool to help you. And then the last thing I want to note is most state and city governments are running on a shoestring. And so again, having flexibility, being able to show that your background is something that is relevant and useful for the job you're applying for, but you have the ability to learn, to adapt, to work with colleagues is really important because in state and local government, sometimes there aren't that many other people to work on a project. And so we need people who can be flexible, who can work in collaboration with other divisions or other departments to make the magic happen. Because I think state and city governments are where a lot of the really good stuff is happening because we're working with our residents to actually make a difference on the ground. And so you have an opportunity to be the face of good government, but you have to do it sometimes on a shoestring. And so you have to be creative and you have to be able to work in teams. So I will leave it at that for the moment.
Okay. Thank you for that, Rese. It was really good. Also, now I know more about how stuff works within the District of Columbia government. I live right outside of DC, so you think you know things, then you realize you don't know. Start talking to experts. All right, so we turn now to Nicole. Nicole, you ready to go? And remember, I think you can share. So okay, good to go.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll give it a try when I get there. But I'll just start with that everything that Lis and Rese said, I 100% agree with from the perspective of state of Minnesota. So this has all been really, really great information for everybody. At Minnesota DNR, I'll start out with just the kind of jobs that we have, kind of similar to what Rese was describing, District of Columbia. Kind of entry-level positions or field biologist positions, all sorts of different types of field biology from more general ecology to very taxa-specific folks. But again, having that kind of adaptability within the state needs as budgets kind of move and get constrained is always useful. There's also a lot of data analysis and environmental review kind of positions, like environmental review being environmental impact statements for different all sorts of different sort of permitting that happens in the state, groundwater withdrawal, or building a factory, what have you. So those are more kind of office-based data review types of positions. There's also program consultants and project coordinators, and so those tend to be a little bit more of like a middle entry position, where you're helping kind of run larger groups or teams in some sort of endeavor. And then we also have research scientist positions, a lot of research scientist positions at Minnesota DNR. So these tend to be, they're usually looking for PhD level researchers, but with a solid kind of research track record and a master's degree, or even a really solid research track record and an undergrad degree, you can be competitive for those sorts of positions. But Minnesota DNR really, I've only worked for Minnesota DNR, so I suppose I'm a little, from a state perspective, more biased towards Minnesota, but they have a really, really strong support for strong, scientists and looking for that strong kind of rigorous track record. So I'd been in an academic setting for almost 10 years before I came here, and it was I was nervous about kind of going from an academic setting to a state research setting, but I'd say the support for science and going to national conferences and all that sort of thing, publishing, is very much there and valued within the state government. So that's been really refreshing. The different jobs also have really different kind of spatial scales that they work at. So some, are focused at a state park or at a wildlife management area. Others are doing biological surveys across the entire state. Our program interacts with the 5 upper Mississippi River states. So we work across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri. So it can have really, really wide-ranging kind of areas that you could work depending on what the job is. And then what I was going to do is just show you all, sending a share request. See if this will work. I was going to show you all the Minnesota Careers website. If I can remember how to use Zoom. We don't use Zoom here. Okay, so if you search for Minnesota Careers on online, you'll find this website. In here, this is what it looks like after you click that link. So there's this external applicant portal. You can click the search for jobs now. Just kind of save this in here to make it all easier. You go into view all jobs, and then a list kind of pops up like this, and you can kind of filter on the side. So here I've filtered to the Natural Resources Department. That's our DNR. The other environmentally related state agency we have in Minnesota is the Pollution Control Agency. They also have ecologists. It's more general, like kind of ecotoxicology sort of things. But these 2 agencies work really closely together on natural resources in the state. So you can scan through here and see all the different jobs that are open right now. And if you wanted to, you could save this search where it'll save the filters, and it can like email you an update when there's new jobs. Super similar to if you've been on USA jobs or US Gov USA jobs, which of course there's no job opportunities right now with the federal government, but it's the same kind of idea, and I'm sure other state agencies have a similar sort of thing. So then just to give you a quick look at a job announcement, this is for a research scientist 2 position, fisheries focused. Here are all of the minimum qualifications that are listed, and I'll try to make this a little bit bigger. So hopefully it's easier to see. When the resume is reviewed by HR before, so if I was hiring for this position, before I see any resume, it's going to go through HR, like was talked about earlier. They only pass along ones that meet every single minimum qualification. And using these exact keywords, as was also mentioned before, is really important because HR doesn't know, if it says statistical software here, write that word in your resume. Don't say, I know how to program in R. HR does not know that R is a statistical program. So that I think is really, really important for getting through that kind of filtering process. To show you what that looks like, I'm just gonna share my resume really quick, which wasn't from this job posting, but I just went in and highlighted some of the kind of keywords that were in the job posting for when I applied to this job. So these purple ones were all words from that job application that I made sure were here in the top. So this opening paragraph is just riddled with things from there. And of course, you have to be honest. Don't exaggerate what you're saying, because it'll come out in the interview, and that's never good. So just be honest, but also use the exact words from the job posting. And for a lot of environmental agencies, they're mission driven, and so getting that up in the application is also really, really important. So I wanted them to know that I was passionate about the Upper Mississippi River, and this position was really focused on linking science and decision making. So, making that clear up here, this kind of more purpose of why you want this job and why you're going to be really, really passionate in the job, that sort of thing. I also just briefly highlighted a few other, there's words straight from the job posting that are in here. Here's an example where the job posting wanted advanced experience in statistics. That phrase is exactly from the job posting. And then I put in here's the more specific things that I know how to do: time series analysis, multivariate analysis, machine learning, so that once this gets to the hiring manager who might know more about statistics, they can see that example. So this part is speaking to the HR filter, and this part is speaking to the hiring manager. And then another piece, just because after being in the academic setting for a while and having a CV, I had no idea how to get to a resume. So here I just packed in a bunch of things. I'm not 100%. I'd be curious for other people's perspective on if this is a good idea or not. But my thought here was I can put in a lot of these keywords, and these are things where every single one of these points I'm ready to talk about in an interview. And so I'm making sure that they know I have this kind of wide range of skills, and I'm not just putting in words willy-nilly. I know I can back this up in the interview. And so I think a big thing to remember about resumes is the purpose of the resume is to get you an interview. And once you're in the interview, forget that they've seen the resume. You need to do all of the talking about everything that you've done. You can say exact things in the resume. For our hiring process in particular, we are not allowed to use any information from your resume in our assessment of you in the interview. So reiterating things, being as clear and specific as possible, rather than just saying you did field work, say the types of field work, the types of equipment you use, the types of methods, spell it out really, really clearly. I think that's the most common and kind of painful to watch mistake is people come in for the interview, they've got all this great experience and knowledge, and they just don't tell you about it. So you got to do the talking for yourself once you get in that door. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to cover. So thanks.
That was awesome, Nicole. Thank you so much. I'm going to use the chair's prerogative for a second because I want to drill in for folks. I hire, the people that I hire are usually pretty entry level, and I would be I would be lying if I said that when I'm having an interview with you as a candidate, I have remembered all those details about you that I liked about in the first place. I brought you in because I liked you. I brought you in because I thought you could possibly do this job. That's why we're going to have this conversation. But please, exactly what Nicole was saying, you have to drill it into me why you're the right person for this job. Tell me the story that you want to be communicated.
I would second that, but say sometimes it's just because you're busy. I mean, I often have 6 hours of meetings in a day that just go back to back. So, I mean, even getting to the bathroom is difficult sometimes. So my being able to have read your resume right before I talk to you is often difficult to fit in.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing too. It might not seem fair, but the onus on getting the job is on the applicant, right? So you should be treating it like you're preparing for a grad school interview. And if you could hear the lawnmower outside my window right now, I'm really, really sorry. That's not my fault. I live in an end unit. We shouldn't have this noise. They're just rolling through the area. But that's the thing. If you think oh, I have to prepare for a panel to get into grad school. I have to prepare for my dissertation panel. I have to do all these other things that are related to succeeding as like through the academic experience as a scientist. A lot of the same practices apply for these applications too, because you just want to you want to walk out of the interview room feeling like you just made that person like almost like fall in love with you. Like I'm not actually in love with you, but you know what I mean? Like I in the past likened it to speed dating. You have this tiny little window of time to make your best first impression. So make it. You know, really put yourself out there as the solution to their problem. And that's the kind of thing that gets you results. Go ahead, Lis.
And there was a question in the Q&A about whether people read the cover letter first or the CV first.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Rese is looking at short answer questions and other questions too. You don't know what they're going to read first. People will just pick stuff up. And so everything that you submit has to be able to stand on its own and represent you well. They're not chapters in a book. You don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's like every individual, you should presume that every person is going to do the opposite of what you want them to do. Like that's a good way to make sure that you don't screw it up. Because you'll do like each individual piece as appropriately as is necessary. And and you as an individual person who was looking for work, or you're going to have your preferences too. Like we're speaking in a sort of best practice environment here. And if you're just trying to just get a job, and trust me, plenty of people are in that boat right now, and that's a pretty normal state of affairs for a lot of people anyway, then you might do things differently. But what we're trying to give you is, you're looking for a specific kind of position, a specific level that correlates to the skills that you already have. And this is the way to go about it. And like it's like you might find that the more of a like a lawn sprinkler approach that's undirected and everything else might work for you because you're sending out 1,000 applications a day. Good luck to you getting the job that you actually want. You might get a few callbacks because it's a bunch of AI driven stuff or whatever, but like at the end of the day, like it's not going to be as effective. You're going to spend your time on it, then spend your time doing it effectively and maximize the applications that you do make, because they should be for the things that will work for you, or or at the very least like a good movement spot through your career pathway.
Nice. Even if you are applying to a whole bunch of places just because you need a job, you need to make each of those places feel like you really want that job. Like you need to go and be prepared.
Yeah. Okay. So people probably have like other questions, everything else. I'm going to give you a chance to cogitate while I roll through a few announcements while I have your attention. I'm so sorry. It's my job. I am in charge of marketing as well as membership and communications for ESA. We've been doing an awful lot of career-oriented content over the past several months. We have 2 more exploration webinars. We have 1 more in May, we have 1 more in June, and then we're going to take a break for the year because folks are kind of out for the summer. You can find the information about those on our website through the webinars page. You can also find recordings of past events. You can also view those on the YouTube channel. If you want like easy notification about when this stuff is going on or whatever, get on our mailing list, join the ESA group on LinkedIn, and also follow our business page. We have 1 other current ongoing series in our professional development work for this year, and that's on statistical methods, basic quantitative methods. We had to reschedule the meta-analysis and ecology event, not because it was not for a bad reason, but for a good reason. We just haven't picked a date yet. It will probably be in May or June. But then we have spatial statistics, individual-based modeling, and machine learning methods coming up. I highly recommend that if you just need a crash course in some of this stuff or an introduction to it, sign up. They're free to student members and they're very cheap for everybody else. Then next week we also have a separate event on communicating science to decision makers. And then once those things are done, we're also taking a break from PD for the foreseeable future to get us through summertime, because we're preparing for the big annual meeting coming up in August. If you're curious about certification in ecology, here's some really general information about that. There's a lot posted on the website. The application for certification, is based entirely on what you've already done, based entirely on your previous experience and your education. There's continuing education that we help to provide to support that as on an ongoing basis, but it can help make a difference in your career growth and development. And then finally, I can tell you that we're now open for late breaking abstracts for the annual meeting in Baltimore. It's going to be a great time. We thought there would probably be a lot more federal scientists participating in this year's annual meeting in Baltimore than probably be the reality, but that is a-okay. We're still putting together a great program. These late breaking poster abstracts actually also include what we're calling a project proposed poster option, which is I'm just getting started. I have a model, or I have a conjecture. I'm about to start my research. You can put that on a poster and you can get live feedback on that. And that's like now part of the meeting as well. So that's going to be some exciting stuff. We are building a ton of career development content into the meeting again. Career Central is actually going to extend to 4 days. The first day is going to be focused on a hiring event that, yes, we're doing partly because of the large number of federal scientists in the area who suddenly find themselves needing to make a move. But it's good for anyone who's making a transition, or anybody who's early career or a student and trying to figure out what next steps look like. Then on the Thursday, we're actually going to do a showcase on like environmental ed, ecology ed. So if that's something that you're into, you might want to stick around for that part as well. We do have some limited registration and travel funding available for everybody. So if cost is a concern, you can apply for any one of many options, as are all listed on the website right now. And they're going to be out in all of the promotional emails as well. And then these are just a few other resources that have at your disposal while you're looking into your career, trying to make moves, trying to find new opportunities. Our Career Center is actually provided through our publisher, Wiley. It's just esacareercenter.org. Lots of positions listed, but you can add your own profile there, and that makes you searchable and also makes it easy to apply for things as they come up. Sign up for the Ecolog listserv if you haven't already done so, and then as well get onto our online communities through the Discourse platform. So, questions, folks. I'm just going to start taking them off the top because we're doing a good job of answering questions live as they come in. But as we see coming in here, everyone does this anonymously. If applying for an entry-level job, does it detract from the resume if outside of the field experience, here I'm going to rephrase, if experience from outside of the field is used to show some experience related to the job description? As an example, I worked as a ranch hand, spending long days in all conditions. Would this be helpful to mention for a habitat restoration tech job, since it shows tolerating hard work in all conditions, or does it just seem like filler?
That would be awesome to see, and especially if you're able to make that direct connection to why it's relevant to that job, which just in what was typed there, it's clear. So I love to see that sort of thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, especially for jobs that require you to be outside, that require you to haul heavy equipment, which is what a lot of my biologist positions have. You have to be able to carry your equipment over rough ground and, on slippery surfaces and all of that. And so that is directly relevant. And just make sure, again, that you're using those keywords.
Yeah, if I may seize the prerogative again, because this one got me thinking a little bit. One thing we talked about in the last workshop, and I was actually just talking with my boss about, is like transferable skills, and how a lot of things that scientists do are actually super duper transferable at the end of the day. I don't know if anyone wants to respond to that in general, but this example that this person put in here is one that actually made me think, because if you're the same person I talked to 2 years ago in Portland, you can say so, it's fine. But I was talking with a person during I was doing a resume review with them, and they were expressing how, like, I am a field researcher, that's what I want to do, but all my stuff has been like basically in ranch management, Like, is that going to be helpful? And I was like, of course it's going to be helpful. It's like, I mean, yeah, you're not like actively surveying prairie chickens at the moment, but like you're doing the exact same thing with another, like with other species, and you're out there in the field, you're doing the job. It's just the job is just for a different thing. So talk about that, pitch it that way.
I think specific to this example, depending on exactly what kind of restoration work the person is looking at, I could see something like if you're a ranch hand and you're thinking about how are you moving your cattle herd around to make sure that they're not overgrazing, looking at, are there potentially toxic plants in the field? Those sorts of things are all relevant for habitat restoration in a way that, maybe doesn't come to mind immediately, um, but can easily be cross-applied.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to mention related to this is a lot of times even it goes a really long way to describe how you learn. And it's super rare that you get somebody to come into a job that has done exactly what that job is. And so knowing that people can learn and adapt is huge as well. And it's almost like any job can relate to that. So that more often for us comes up in the interview, but yeah.
Also, a lot of jobs, especially when you're going to be in the field, you're going to have to be communicating with people that are not the typical group of people that you work with. And, there is a lot of tension often between government and landowners and ranchers, for example. So being able to say that you were in that world and have that experience, you might be a great communicator and ambassador.
Well, thanks, folks. Next question is from Colette. As a person about to graduate with an MS in environmental science, should I be looking at entry or mid-level positions? And within this field, the only professional experience I have is as a graduate research assistant. How does that look in an application? Where should Colette be aiming?
I
think
feel like
there's a lot of, oh, go ahead, Nicole.
I was going to say, I feel like the MS degree where with only the professional experience of graduate research assistant is right on this line between entry and mid-level. And so I'd probably be looking at both of them. And there might be some mid-level that are going to be a little bit more of a stretch or maybe even out of reach. And there'll be some entry level that are, probably you're overqualified for, but you're right at that kind of cusp.
Yeah, I would say something similar. We have a number of our jobs are hired at what for us is what's called an 11. But our system is pretty similar to the federal system. So a GS7, or sorry, a GS11 or a CS11 for us is pretty similar, which is that sort of early to mid career. So we definitely have people with less experience who make it into that category, and we have people with more experience who make it into that category. And we do have some flexibility in sort of the step that we bring them in at. So, maybe if you don't have a lot of experience, you come in right at the bottom of an 11. And maybe if you have a little bit more experience, you might come in as a 3 or a 4 or even a 5.
That's interesting, Rese. Thank you for sharing that. I was looking at this other question that had come in while we're responding there, and Lisa and Nicole both responded with text, but it corresponds to a question that I kind of have, and I wonder if it's helpful for like folks who are regular attendees, because like I have been in the nonprofit industrial complex for a lot of years, and both for me as an applicant and then also for me as a hiring manager, it's very rare that like the perfect person is there, because like when you're in organizations like ours, not very big, every job is like other duties as assigned is like the second thing on the list as opposed to the end of the list, because you will end up wearing like 30 different hats at the end of the day. My job is entirely made up by me. Like after coming up on my 7th anniversary here, at this point, I do what I think is appropriate. Um, it's really hard to list that kind of a stuff. So you put out regular job listings when you say you're looking for candidates. But then I wind up knowing of like that a person's like, oh, I like this one, and it's not because they necessarily like checked all the boxes up front. It's because like you can see all those nuances and the hidden vigorish, if you will, that's like listed in there. Like, is that even an opportunity for people in government roles because of like the kinds of restrictions that you're explaining? No, I think, but even with what Rese was just saying, like, yeah, there's that. Like, you don't necessarily have to hit it perfectly, but can you apply from a basis of, yeah, so my experience looks kind of weird, but here's why I'm perfect for it anyway? Like, is that an option for people?
Yeah, I think there's room even within what, honestly to me is a frustratingly rigorous process for hiring. Um, but if you can speak to the specific skills or experience or knowledge, and it doesn't look like the classic route, and there was a law passed, or it was a state executive order, I guess I can't remember, like a year ago in the state of Minnesota, we can't have degree requirements. So when you'll see in the Minnesota DNR job postings, it'll be at like this degree or this type of knowledge or experience. So master's degree or record of publication. And that's just in recognition in the state that people can gain experience from other ways. And, you don't have to have a perfectly linear, perfect path to still be a great employee that we want to have around. So just have to be able to sell it, make the connection for the person.
And this would be a good opportunity to tell that story in your cover letter if you have a cover letter. And even if the job does not require one, I would recommend including it as a part of your resume package if there is nowhere else to stick it. For me, I did not have a traditional sort of fisheries and wildlife state agency background. And so I had to make the case of why my somewhat weird career path was actually what they wanted. And apparently it worked.
Thank you. Sorry, sorry, I just got distracted thinking about your old job, actually, Reese. But the so like one other question I think that sort of pertains is, and like, yes, we talk about how it's important to customize like a resume and application cover letters like per opportunity. From like the perspective of your individual political entities, not your individual agencies necessarily, but is there a benefit to having like this is my Minnesota resume template, this is my DC resume template, because it like meets like all those regular uh requirements, and then it's less customization? Because my thing would be to have just completely do a separate thing basically every time, which probably isn't the best move. I broke them. I can't believe I finally did it.
Reese, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, it varies a little bit because even if it's for the same agency or the same government, the hiring manager is going to be different. And so when I update my resume, I do have sort of a general template that I use. And then I look at, what am I saying in those descriptions under each job? But it is a little bit of trial and error. And you know, as we've heard, you don't really know what people are looking at until you know what they're looking at. And maybe that's in the interview when they ask you questions. But if you do get an interview with that agency, that can give you a little bit of insight into what worked or didn't, at least for that segment of the agency.
Good. Thank you. Okay, we got time. We got time for like literally one more. And if we have one more, look at that. How appropriate. How do you recommend addressing gaps in resumes due to caring for your children or other kinds of responsibilities like that?
Honestly, I don't notice them when I'm looking at resumes. I look at sort of the total amount of experience that people have, and I try to be very uninterested in those gaps, unless there's some other flashing red light about why that person may have had a gap. I generally assume people have a reason that they had a gap, and that's it.
Nicole?
Yeah, I haven't noticed it either. And I was trying to be like, were there people that had gaps and I didn't notice it, or did yeah, I feel like I'm a person who, so like if you got to the interview, I'm a person who I feel like I need to like get things out in order to speak like in my truest way, I suppose. And so like if it makes you feel better to address it directly, I think that's fine, but I don't think you need to feel like obligated to, or to like justify it or anything like that. Like ultimately it's just about what sort of skills, knowledge, abilities you're bringing to the job and why you're the right fit, and every single detail of your past isn't necessarily important. So I don't know. But it's a good question though.
That's interesting because I've always noticed when there are big gaps in timing, and I've wondered what it was. And if the person's resume was interesting enough and they had the skills, we might move to an interview, and I would probably ask. So you should have something, you know, prepared that explains why you are still current on your knowledge base. You know, so I took time off to watch my kids, but I've stayed active in the field by doing whatever. I mean, that can just be volunteering, me going to museums, whatever, you know, just, you're going to have to, they want you to hit the ground running. So it depends, I guess, since you guys didn't notice, I did. It's going to depend on who is reading your resume.
Yeah, and I guess it's like if you're coming straight out of that gap, then I guess that would be more immediately obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Yeah,
Because I had a whole thing. Go ahead, Rese.
usually
Sorry.
if it's been a year or less since the person last had a position, I figure, you know, it's hard to find a job. Or, you know, maybe they had a short-term issue. If it's been 5 or 10 years, then, you know, maybe, yeah, I might wonder if it's most immediate. But yeah, I generally don't notice otherwise.
Yeah. And I was
Unless
like,
there's a history of gaps too, where somebody had a job and then, you know, they had a job for a short period of time that was not clearly a temp position, then you might be worried about them getting fired.
yeah, let's say like the gaps to a person who notices the gap, for a person who's like being cognizant of sort of what the whole picture looks like, they can kind of almost tell a story. It's really none of the person's business what the gap was for. If they're the kind of person who's gonna get stuck on that, you probably don't want to work for them. So think about that too. But yeah, like I at one time was hiring a person. They had a whole history prior to applying for a job with us, and that was in their resume. And then there was a gap, and now here they are applying. What the gap was they went back to school, like, and it was they just weren't working like in like professional jobs at the time. They were doing other work, and like that's okay. It's not a big deal. But that was obvious that's what had happened. It wasn't even like worth like sniffing about. But like, yeah, at this point, if people were going to be hung up on someone taking a year to take care of a kid or a sick family member or something like that, that frankly, that is them stay away. Stay away. Because they're gonna be a real pain in the butt to deal with as a boss. All right, folks. Thank you all so very much for your time. Everyone who attended, thank you for coming. Rese, Nicole, thank you so much for your help. Really super duper appreciate it. I will be following up with an email with resources from this probably this afternoon or early evening. There's a whole bunch of contacts on another slide that I didn't get to, but don't worry about that. It'll be in the message. Everybody have a great day, rest of your week, and hopefully we get to see you in August at the annual meeting. Yay!